Hello everyone, welcome back to one of our videos explaining pretty much a question where Mr. Igor showed us that you guys are struggling in. Most specifically, we're gonna pretty much teach you guys, most specifically how to use expansion, factoring, and the quadratic formula. But first, let's focus on expanding. So this is an equation that Mr. Igor gave us. X plus 3 times x minus 2. And there's two ways of doing this. There's by just using this formula right here that Mr. Igor's offered you guys, or you can use the FOIL method, which I'll explain later on. But first, let's use the equation that Mr. Igor gives us, which is very, very easy. All you have to do is identify what is the A and what is the B, which is very easy. A is just the first number in the first binomial, and B is the second number of the second binomial. So by just identifying this, all you have to do is plug it into this formula, so let's do that. It will be x squared plus 3 plus negative 2 x plus 3 times negative 2. Now all you gotta do is just add and multiply. X squared plus x, because 3 minus 2 is just 1, so it would be x squared plus x plus 3 times negative 2, which just is negative 6. Pretty easy, right? Just plugging in numbers into the equation. That's one way of thinking about it, but I know that some of you guys just don't like memorizing certain equations. And I totally get that, which is why you can use the FOIL method as well. The FOIL method, if you can pay attention right here, it stands for something. It's an acronym. FOIL, so the F starts with first, outer, inner, and last, which might be a little bit confusing at first hand, but I'll show you what this means. So let me write the equation again. X plus 3 times x minus 2. So this is how you first do it. You do the first term in the binomial times the first term in the second binomial. So that's the first in FOIL. Then there's the outer. So now you do the first term times the outer term, the last term of the second binomial. So x times negative 2. Now there's the inner, stands for the I, which is just the last term of the second binomial times the first term, because it's the inside, right? It's the inside. That is the last, which is the last term times the last term of the second binomial as well. So now all we're going to do is just multiply and add them together. So x times x, which would be x squared, x times negative 2, because it's the first times the last one, would be plus 3x. Then you do 3 times x, which is just the inner. It would be the first one. So let's go back first to the outer. The first term times the last term, which would be negative 2x. Then we do the inner, which is the last in the first binomial, and the first and last binomial would be plus 3x. Then you do the last term in the first binomial times the last term in the second binomial, negative 6. Now we have two like terms, which is this one right here. We have negative 2x and 3x. All you gotta do is add, which 3 plus negative 2, or you can think of it as 3 minus 2, is just x. So the answer would be x squared plus x, because 3 minus 2 is 1, minus 6. We got the exact same answer using a different way of thinking. So that is one way which you can expand a function. So now let's go into factoring, or in this specific case, the quadratic formula. So the equation that Mr. Igor gave you guys is x squared minus 5x plus 10 equals 0. So first, let's try to factor it. To factor it, to see if it's actually factorable, there's one trick that I use specifically, which you get the first term, the last term times the first term to create 10, because 10 times 1 is just 10. And then you create kind of like the small t, or a cross. And then you get the middle term, negative 5. And the rule for this method specifically is that you have to find two numbers that multiply for this box, but add for this box, right? So what two numbers multiply to 10 and negative 5? So let's try to find the factors of 10. You can think of 5 times 2 or negative 5 times negative 2. 5 plus 2 is what? 7. Negative 5 plus negative 2 is negative 7. So you see that these two numbers do not correlate to negative 5, meaning that it is not factorable. But that's okay. If it's not factorable, you can use the quadratic formula right here, which might look very scary, but if you simply know how to identify what A, B, and C is, it is very easy. So let's identify what A, B, and C is in this formula right here. Not formula, sorry, this equation. So this is how it's actually supposed to look like with just variables. It is a squared, which a also is x, so it's a squared x, you can think of like that, minus or plus, I'll put plus in this case, but even it's minus in this one, bx plus c. So knowing this right here, we know that a is 1, because that's the coefficient of the quadratic right here. So a is 1, b is negative 5, and c is 10. So now all you have to do now, you can either use your calculator or just plug this in. So now let's plug this in into the quadratic formula right there. Negative 5, which would just be here, so negative 5, which you can just think about it, negative and a negative adds to a positive, so it actually will be a positive 5. So let's make that into a positive 5 instead of a negative 5. Plus or minus square root of b squared. Let me give you some space here really quick. So a is 1 and c is 10. So b squared, so b is negative 5. So what is negative 5 times negative 5? 25. So 25 minus 4 times a times c. So 4 times a, which is 1 in this case, times 10. Let me give more space here as well, since you guys already got that. Times 10 divided by 2a. Since a is 1, 2 times 1 is 2. So now we gotta simplify this. So let's simplify this. 5 plus or minus 25 minus 4 times 1 times 10. 4 times 1 is just 4. 4 times 10 is 40. So it'll be 25 minus 40 over 2. So now, just looking at this, we know right here, this is gonna give us an imaginary number, which I'm not quite sure if Mr. Igor already showed you guys, but it's a little bit of a strange concept. I'll show it right here just so you guys can get familiar to what it will look like. So 5 plus or minus 25 minus 40 would be a negative number. It would be negative 15 over 2. So that is the answer right here. You can leave it like this, or you can give it the answer in 5 plus or minus I 15 over 2. However, I do want to stress this, that there is no real number that the negative is square root, which is why we use our notation I to represent an imaginary number. So this is just a quick introduction to expansion and also the quadratic formula, and a small glimpse and a small introduction to what are imaginary numbers.